Today's noisy digital-first world is a challenging one for business owners. How do you get more people to know you, trust you, and to respect your brand? How do you stay front of mind with your target audience, as well as talked about in a positive way in the marketplace? The answer is public relations, but not as you know it. Get ready to unlock the potential of your business through the power of PR, content, and digital communications. Get ready to become your own PR machine.
PR done well with passion, purpose, and strategic intent will transform your business. PR done well will help elevate your professional personal brand in the marketplace. PR done well will help unlock your potential on many fronts. But to do PR well as an ambitious business owner, as a purpose-led solopreneur, you can have the best strategy under the sun, but if you don't get off your behind and take action, then nothing's going to happen. And that's where people come unstuck. Often it's not for the want of trying. For most people, it's not slackness. Again, you're running a business, you're a motivated individual, but maybe there are roadblocks that are holding you back. In short, if you want to nail your PR in your business and with your brand, you're going to need to have some skin in the game. You're going to want to have to put yourself out there online via the content you publish or the comments you make on social media or face-to-face at events or in boardroom presentations, or maybe from the stage at industry conferences and the like. Whatever the channel, public relations is a 360-degree contact sport that requires you, the business owner, to be front and center. But for some reason, you're not doing it. For whatever reason, you're holding yourself back. You might even be out there online doing stuff, but are you pulling your punches? Why? Well, that's what we're about to find out. Not only that, we're going to discuss some solutions as well. And to help us navigate these roadblocks so we can develop a true PR mindset and unlock the potential of our business through public relations, content, and digital communications, please welcome my expert guest for this episode. Her name is Mell B, and also known as Mell B. Mell B is a coach and a mindset mentor who helps people to gain clarity, confidence, and commitment to follow through as they grow their influence and create more impact in the marketplace. Welcome to the show, Mell. This is a pretty big problem. Credible entrepreneurs and thought leaders playing small because of a host of reasons, but much of it comes down to mindset.
I completely agree. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. How do we feel safe to show up? And if we talk about the concept of PR, well, what is PR? It's been seen more as a brand, as a business. And the downside of being more visible is that we might be judged more. We might be called out more. We have fears that we don't even realize are holding us back. So I'd love to help some people be more comfortable being visible doing their PR activities.
Yeah, and there's so many, visibility takes so many forms, as I said at the outset. You know, it's the content you create, and that's probably scary for a few people. Live streaming probably scares the pants off most people. Even being on podcasts like this, being interviewed for a local newspaper, for example, or doing a talk is PR. Writing a book is PR. All of these things are PR elements, and it means you're putting yourself out there, and that's where the roadblocks are. What do you see with people? I mean, I get the feeling that really the more credible you are, the longer you've been in the game. You've got runs on the board, the scuffs on the knees and the knuckles. You're hardened, you've been out there. And they're the people running, businesses but are less likely to put themselves out there. Is this something you're seeing?
Well, I mean, there was two parts to that question. What is credibility? Yes, you might have been in it longer, but perhaps you're more comfortable with that level of exposure because you've been in it a bit longer. Maybe You've had some experiences where either your fears didn't eventuate. You went, oh, that actually wasn't that bad. There was more love out there and support and camaraderie and other people thinking similar thoughts to maybe that thought challenging concept or position or philosophy that you released into the world, and you didn't pull a punch. So sometimes it's challenging our own thinking and going, I'm going to do this anyway. And then I will address any possible fallout that may or may not come from that. And the second thing is that kind of inner resolve and the resilience of, well, people didn't agree with me or people did challenge my thoughts, but I didn't die from that.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't as scary having somebody disagree or having a different opinion. So that piece about credibility, maybe it's the confidence to stand up despite people challenging you that makes you credible. Thoughts?
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good point. Because, and I guess to stand out today, you can't be vanilla. Vanilla is AI. AI writing something is vanilla. And a lot of people put stuff out, for just to tick a box. We're not just talking about creating content, for example, just to tick a box. We're talking about carving out maybe a thought leadership positioning or an expert positioning in the marketplace where, you do have to push a little harder. You've got to actually have thoughts. If you're going to be a thought leader, you need leading thoughts. And so that's interesting that you're putting it out, but that resilience piece. So let's unpack those two, because do you see people that have had an issue in the past that they stuck their head up over the virtual parapet and something happened? Or is it more that they've come up through corporate ranks, maybe, and, where it's all about mitigating risk and you actually don't say anything?
Ooh, what I wrote down was something on a different perspective. Maybe some people have that risk profile, and that has never crossed my desk. More of if many of us have shifted from some sort of corporate job, whatever corporate means
Yeah, true.
anyway. But what I come across is people who've come out of that space as maybe a middle manager or supervisor, and they had some level of ladder elevation that they have adopted a level of expertise because of the title or the position they hold. So that external judgment is less obvious because they've been promoted. They're in that role with some level of authority and insight.
Right.
And then when they step into the entrepreneurial world, who am I to talk about this completely different concept or this other topic or something that there are influencers, there are keynote speakers, there are TED talkers talking way deeper and maybe in our minds more qualified, more whatever, more something than I am. So that imposter syndrome. That's what mostly comes across my desk. Right. Usually if they've shifted out of the corporate, they've come from a position of being respected. And now who am I in this big global world of social media or whatever platform? Who am I to talk about this and think I'm a thought leader?
Yeah.
One of the things that really irks me is when people are generally, you don't call yourself a thought leader. That's a little bit arrogant, a little bit.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
The activities you do is challenging the thoughts. So we're leading with new perspectives or takes on subjects or problems. So what we're doing is of thought leadership caliber. But I've seen people commenting on other people's comments about thought leadership with, the puke emoji, going, ooh, that's gross. And it's like, that bugs me.
Yeah.
Don't we need innovation? Don't we need creative thinking? Don't we need to address some of the problems that exist? Therefore, we can't solve the problems with the same thing, and we need thought leadership. So people who are like, ooh, that's gross, who are they? It's like, I think you're missing the point.
I think that's
where we're going with that question. Sorry.
No, but I hear you, and yes, in a world of emojis, that can carry a lot of perceived weight in without any words, which is powerful and scary. And I guess the other thing when you talk about people, if they've come out of corporate or they've been employed, for example, and their identity probably for quite a while has been wrapped up in their title and the brand and the company or the organisation that they work for. But if you are running your own business, there's nowhere to hide. And and you have to get out there and talk and, drum up business and be visible, unless you've struck it lucky and for some reason you've got a million clients lining up your door, sort of thing. But so that I can understand how that really can manifest itself. But going back to what you're saying earlier about maybe you've had a bad experience in the past, what sort of experiences are they? Is it something that people went out onto social media early and it didn't work for them? Is it probably more about public speaking? Is it more about an article they wrote that didn't land very well with someone?
Okay, so here's a really ironic thing that comes up. It's so backwards in its simplicity of the challenge. So we start out, and you're right, it is in the early days. We start out, we put content of some sort. It doesn't matter where and how, but we show up in some way and it lands flat, or we don't get engagement, or whatever happens. It doesn't reach. You haven't got the algorithm, whatever. And so therefore we define ourselves by those vanity metrics. And it stacks the evidence case of, who am I? No one's interested in what I have to say, or that wasn't very useful. Whatever we frame that lack of engagement or interest, that then validates the imposter syndrome that comes up. And so therefore, when you've got a bit more history and I guess, momentum behind you, then we're referencing back to the past. And this is the biggest problems humans have, is we're never in the moment. We're either looking towards the future, we're living in the past. Well, that happened then, so I'm not going to bother doing it now because I didn't get much traction then. I'm not going to waste my time in it now. Even though, here's the ironic part, the visibility is what we want. We want to reach more for whatever reason, but because we didn't get visibility, we've provided evidence that I'm not good at whatever, or I shouldn't do this, and no one's interested in it. No one saw me, even though we want it. And so we have this crazy circle of backwards thinking that doesn't move us where we want to go. We've got to have that, as I mentioned at the start, that resilience to go, that was then, that's where I want to go. What do I have control of right now? And worrying about what people are saying, are seeing, are thinking about me is irrelevant to where I'm at and where I want to take things in the future for my life, my business.
And I got to tell you, you're fighting the algorithms, and chances are it's LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is getting a little harder to get engagement with today. But that's across the board, so don't take it personally. I sometimes do, but don't take it personally if you put some really good work out there and it doesn't go anywhere. That just means that we've got to work hard. It doesn't mean we have to game the algorithm or do anything like that. You still got to put out your good stuff and find that tribe and connect with more people. And, we're talking about creating content because that's a big deal. I think, speaking and networking and getting out there and talking to people and putting in a phone call to someone who might be an influencer, or, pitching yourself to a podcaster, or pitching an opinion piece or an article idea to a vertical title that services your industry. So all of these things are wrapped up in this, and getting out and speaking, of course, is a key to that as well. So it manifests itself in a number of things, because I guess if you're saying, look, I want to, that I've got as a magazine that services my industry. I feel that having an article in there, being quoted in there, having some visibility or presence in this key publication or publications, that means you're going to have to pitch something in. That means you're probably going to have to call someone and follow it up. Again, that's hardcore for a lot of people, unless they've got someone doing it on their behalf.
Yeah, and you're right. I did focus on that content creation. But when people are ready to, as you say, step up to the next level of exposure, visibility, and reach, again, it's interesting. It doesn't matter where we're at in life and business. There's always a next level.
Yeah,
that's the point of life. Evolving, growing, learning, expanding, whatever your word is. That's the point. People say, what is the meaning of life? To expand, to be more.
Yeah.
That's what calls us. Everybody has a goal of some sort to do something more, bigger, better.
Yep.
And so if that is a driver, I didn't say that's what causes and why, but that is one of my definitions of why we're here on Earth. And so reaching out to an influencer, reaching out to a what we perceive as a high ticket or a high perceived value platform, that can be scary because I might be rejected.
Yep.
It's no different from dating. The fear of rejection is a fundamental fear of humans. That what if they don't like me drives most of our decisions before we hit the publish, send, go button. That's the biggest problem we need to catch ourselves from a mindset point of view is, am I holding myself back? Am I pulling the punch of hitting mail, hitting publish, hitting send, because I'm worried that they won't like me or they won't accept it, which often, as you will probably talk about frequently, has 0 or very 2% to do with you and your article. It's often about timing, topics, social things that's happening. It's often around the follow-up, which also takes courage. I've been rejected twice. I don't want to follow up a third time. That's where the power is. Sometimes I've heard the strategy from speaking bureaus that if you're serious, you will follow up more than twice. That was insightful. They're testing you to see how serious you are, how dedicated you are to your topic.
Yep.
So the visibility reach fear that we have that holds us back, let's call it sabotage. If you've written the article but you're not publishing it, you're not releasing it, it's a form of self-sabotage. It's a crazy safety mechanism that is not serving us.
So we look at, let's unpack a couple of these. So we've got rejection. Now we've added another layer of self-sabotage in. So fear of rejection. And if you're in business, you're going to be rejected all the time, of course. But this is a little different part of the business. So fear of rejection, being concerned about what people will say, about what you know, whether you're going to get a little puke emoji. And I think you did touch on it earlier, Mel, the a little bit on top of that is that if someone comes at you, not in a bad way, so the fear of what people will say, there could be, trolls or whatever. And in my experience, that never eventuates. So, so rarely do we see it.
I've had two clients I've had to coach through nasty trolling, so it does happen.
It does happen, yeah. But it's sometimes not as big as what if you read the media, that every time you go on social media, you're going to get trolled. It doesn't happen. But then the next layer in is, what about is someone who's a legit player in your industry challenges you on your thinking. And that's not trolling. That's just advancing the conversation. And they're doing exactly what you're doing. They're just doing it off the back of what you've said. They've probably been putting out their view as well. So you see, there's that is an issue as well. And that comes back to, I guess, self-confidence.
Totally. I had one just this week who I talk a lot about using intuition, gut instinct in decision making, critical thinking. Yep. And the person pretty much disagreed with what I shared in the middle of a conversation like this. And I was like, but didn't honor the conversation to say, and now what do you want to say in response? They're just kind of like, no, I disagree with that, even though I had a nuanced difference of what they had responded with. So it does take confidence to stand up. I decided it wasn't worth the squeeze. It's like, oh, you have a different opinion. You're not actually open to a conversation. You're just shutting down my thoughts with yours. You just changed the conversation. They delivered what they wanted to say. change the subject. I could have brought it back, but it's like, you know what? That's your opinion. That's fine. I have a different one. I'm going to stay committed to where I want to take my messages, and that conversation is not what I'm going to promote. I have a different conversation perspective. So it's having, as you said, that confidence,
Yep.
but then the commitment to what is my path? What is my lane? What are my thoughts? What difference do I want to make? What impact am I here to leave and create? That's actually way more important than a wounded ego, somebody having a different opinion.
Yep. Does fear of recognition ever pop up? Actually, fear of even not so much fear of success. I know that's an issue, but you can't just be successful like this. But maybe eventually. But fear of recognition, fear of being seen, and when you've probably been a bit more in the back room, or does that just manifest itself in all the other things?
Fear of recognition, that hasn't actually come up. It's been more up. What does the recognition mean? It's like a surface. People like, I'm sad or angry. That's actually a surface level feeling. There's
Yep.
usually something else underneath it. So the recognition. What is the fear of being recognized about? Again, it comes back to being called out, that you're actually not qualified to be talking on this stuff. The sense of worthiness in a whole myriad of reasons usually underpins. So the fear of recognition, that visibility block that's causing us to hold back, that is often comes from something else. And that's where we have to kind of really explore ourselves.
Yep.
We have to look within and go, well, what does that recognition, if I want to label it that, what am I afraid will happen from that recognition? That's usually the cause.
Right.
And it's usually some made up BS in our mind from our ego.
Yeah.
A protective mechanisms.
Yeah. It's funny how a lot of these different things manifest in different ways, but it probably comes back to only a couple of core things that might be the issue. So I guess there's just trying to sort of tighten up on a bit of this before we go into probably more solution stuff and what can we do about it. Number one is the people that don't want to go out there and do anything and really need to, because they've, if you're running a business, there's that part of it, but also, why hold back? Why not have an abundance mindset and, share your ideas and your insights with the world anyway, but it's going to help your business and your professional personal brand, which will help your business. So you've got that side of things. And then you've got, I guess, the next layer in is people pulling their punches. So they're actually out there doing stuff. So they've made that commitment. They're putting the YouTube video out. They've created the podcast. They're, writing articles and posts on LinkedIn, etc. But they're pulling their punches, and they're not going. They're not going as hard as they should be, and they know. And they're probably skirting around the vanilla edges of creating content. So I don't know if we want to sort of tackle those two together, whether they're quite similar. I think maybe they are, but I'll let you unpack that a little bit more. But if people are probably going to be in one of those cases, for example, if they're holding themselves back, what are some, I guess, strategies, ideas, tips have you got for people who might find themselves in that position and they're stuck? They're stuck.
I'd like to take it one step back a little, and the why. So we've kind of talked on it a little bit about some of the reasons why we're thinking the way we feel.
Yep.
But I want to go into more a slightly different reason of why, and that is what I specialize in, about the emotions of being an empath. Now, I recognize most people don't understand what being an empath is, or have a version of it that may not make much sense. So let me help understand that a little.
Yep.
We are all born with the ability to feel and connect with the people and the environment around us. That is not pseudoscience. That is a real survival mechanism that all humans are born with. what happens along the way, and I'm going to give some examples. What happens along the way is we are taught and raised in an environment generally in the Western world to be industrial and to be productive. And anything that doesn't fit those categories is generally, that's woo woo, that's not necessary, it's not medical, it can't be proven, it's not science. But firstly, about the science thing, what is an MRI scanner? It is something that measures the frequency and density of the body.
Yep.
The MRI scanner is the science behind frequency. X-rays, they are all waves of frequency that measure and create pictures of the human body in immense detail nowadays. So people's like, oh, that frequency language stuff. Science is completely based on it. Your life depends on it. We are energy beings and we use energy to resonate and connect with the world around us. Now, let me make that a bit more simplistic. I was on a summit last week, and one of the individuals was saying, I'm not really sure about this empathy thing. I'm not sure that I'm an empath. In fact, I actually would put myself into the non-emotive robot category, which made everyone laugh, of course. And so I just let him talk through, and he said, but I have noticed since I had kids a couple of years ago, I am able to take my walls down and and connect with my children a little bit more because I want to have a connection with them. I want to know what they're feeling and experiencing in the world. I want to be a better, more emotive father to these children. Again, let them talk. And then I changed the subject and said, does anybody else feel that they feel too much? Which is what most people think of as empaths. And I'm going to bring this back to the business, I promise.
Yep.
So quite a few people like, yes, I'm an empath and I really struggle to show up in society as a highly sensitive person because I feel everything that's going around me. And I they have some anxiety. I have a little bit of paranoia about what's going on around people. And I refer back to the gentleman was like, so they would actually like to know what you have learned and you don't even acknowledge. You have learned how to protect yourself so much you think you're a robot. You have adapted your skills so well that you can completely block off and protect yourself. They want to learn that. You're actually more advanced. It's not woo-woo. It's our energy protective system that we don't necessarily understand how it fits into our everyday life. We do it. We've learned it. He grew up with an individual in his home environment that made it difficult. So he learned how to protect himself emotionally, it turned out, because there was too much emotion, anxiety in his childhood. So he learned how to shut himself off from that, to protect himself. What's woo-woo about that? That's completely normal. That's called being a human. Now, how does that play out in visibility and PR? The same sorts of things can happen. We put down a barrier. So the reason we're not sending is, I'm worried I'm going to feel judgment from the person I'm reaching out to. I'm worried that if I put this out there, I'm going to get all this hate energy back at me through trolls or judgments or whatever. The reason we are holding ourselves back sometimes is if we're an empath that isn't empowered enough to understand that we are very sensitive to the things around us, and we'd rather just stay quiet or stay home or not publish ourselves because we feel so deeply the world around us. Does that make sense around some of the why we're sabotaging? We've got the mind going on, but it could actually be part of our emotional sensors that we're protecting as well. Thoughts, questions on that before we go into solutions?
No, let's just keep going. I think the whole thing around empathy too. So you're basically, when you say someone's an empath, that they're more prone to empathy. Is that what what's
nice
your
question? Choosing to express or be in the energy or the emotion of being empathetic is a choice.
Yep.
Being compassionate is a choice. Being an empath is not. We are that way. It's like you can't choose to be ADHD. It is who you are. It's part of you. The challenge is to make it a skill and a gift. And we know that society is accepting that people on the spectrum, for example, are very gifted at different parts that society needs more of, that used to make it wrong. Highly sensitive people have a lot to offer, especially when they've mastered it, especially when they know how to leverage it, how to protect it. So moving into the solutions, I've already given one example. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in your experience, I'm going to just say there's an empathy or an empath, out of 10. Most people on that ladder, there's going to be people who are 10 out of 10 as in terms of empathy and very sensitive, very aware, very compassionate. But then you'll get people dropping down who, 20% of them are, I don't want to put it into percentages, but I'm just trying to get a handle on what do you think when people come to you, are they empathetic, overly empathetic or underly empathetic, or where do they sort of sit in that space and why is it affecting them?
The people who usually come to me have an awareness that they are empathic, which is different from being empathetic. Empathic are the empaths, and they are starting to have significant awareness that it's holding them back.
Right.
We're starting to recognize that they're not doing the visibility pieces. Right. They recognize that there's something to be learned here, and they reach out and like, I want to be more in control of my sensitivities, of which there can be 9, but we're not going to unpack that today. No. There are 9 receptors, 9 ways that empaths can feel and sense the world around them. Most people think it's just that one, and it's the emotions. There's so much more. So to answer your question, most of the population, shall we say, 70%, know that they resonate, feel, they connect with people. You can't have friendships unless there's a connection. You can't experience love unless there's connection. You have some level of being empathic. You can, if we talk about examples of childhood, mothers have this intuitive instinct about their child being in danger or something's wrong. We talk about gut instinct. Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, all credit their intuitive gut instinct as part of their success. So we use the language, we're aware of the language. We all know when we have not paid attention to our gut instinct. We had this little red flag waving in our mind, and we've gone ahead with something and gone, damn it, I knew something wasn't right about that. My little spidey senses were going off and I ignored it. That's your intuition.
Yep.
Your question is, how many people know how to master it, perhaps? Or how many people know that they can up-level it and make it into a skill? No different from an athlete who is born with a certain aptitude, who's tuned it up to be a professional athlete.
Right.
It's a skill. You can ignore it, it can lay dormant. But if you amplify it and you really work with it, life gets easier because then you can protect yourself. And if we talk about the solutions, that gentleman was the example. He knew how to protect himself. Mm-hmm. As coaches, especially the trauma or those people working with conflict in life, it's really important to be able to protect ourselves from what we're being exposed to and the emotions that a client's showing up with. I've done my trench time with the trauma for the first 4 or 5 years of my coaching work years ago. And I had to learn pretty damn fast, and we were taught, how to protect ourselves so that we can be present and hear and choose to have empathy, but not get caught up in the emotion. Be detached, but be compassionate at the same time. That's a skill. And it's a skill everybody can learn. So to answer your question, there's a lot of people who may think they're sensitive, who may think I think I've got this intuitive thing. I do pay attention to it. Can I do more with this? They're the people that really can leverage it for good in their business.
Right. But it can also affect them, again, bringing it back to visibility, putting yourself out there. If you don't I guess, harness it or know where you sit on that, it can probably have an effect, which leads you to, or leads us. You were going. I think I took you off. I took you off the track there a little bit, but so bring that back to what are some things people can do to to try and be more aware of their situation and their feelings and why they're pulling their punches.
Self-awareness, I think, is the number one skill of life.
Yeah.
Knowing that, I mean, often with coaching or accountability or buddying or however you do business with fellow anybody's, having that awareness that I was supposed to hit submit and I have not done it yet. Why? And we're so busy in our lives that we just move on to the next thing on our to-do list and realize that that thing's still there. It's drafted. It's 95% ready to go. Whatever stage of readiness it's at, why is it still not sent? It takes inner reflection. It takes courage to go within and self-inquire and think, actually, I'm worried that somebody might disagree with me. And if somebody disagrees with me, I'm going to feel like a failure because whatever the reason you're afraid of being disagreed with and what that means to you as an individual.
Yep.
So the self-awareness is the first thing. The answers may sound like woo, but I hope I've given enough kind of reference that being able to put up some sort of wall, shield, guard, some people talk about bubbles, whatever it is, may sound woo-woo, but here's the physical explanation I like to give. When you meet someone for the first time, we have a circumference area around our being that we like to have somebody in front of us. That area is you talk about comfort zone, that's our physical comfort zone. How far close to somebody a stranger, do we like to be when we first meet them? That is where you can create, and you already have some sort of shield, because you will have a shield here. Because if somebody comes into your space here, you take a step back. There's this frequency push. That's the woo. You literally are uncomfortable. There is something, it makes you feel a way that you act on. So you can use that very basic knowledge of that's too close for comfort. That's a wall of protection that your psyche has created for your energy field. We feel somebody come up and you will literally step away and pull away because you feel unsafe. So how do you protect it? Being aware. I have been networking and there's some individuals, we've got the ones that we're like, oh, I don't want to be cornered by that person again. I play with this and I'm like, oh, shields up. I just imagine like the sci-fi movies. I just put up this invisible wall. And I have seen it at least 5 or 6 times where the person's walking towards me and they veer off when I like shields up. And it's like they don't see me. They just change direction. It is so fun to play with. Have a play with that. Again, it might sound weird and woo-woo. So what? What have you got to lose? Have a play with your own reality, your own energy field. See what happens. For the overwhelm, for the emotional, the curse that some people say, it's like, I can't leave the house. I just get overwhelmed with everything that's going on around me. I am too sensitive. I really struggle. It pains me to hear when people say I'm too sensitive. You're not too sensitive. You just haven't learned how to protect or purge the energy that you're absorbing. You're not too sensitive. You're an amazing human being. You should be celebrating your skill and your gift. You are highly tuned to the world around you, but it is not tuned up or tuned into what you want to feel. If you are suffering the curse of being an empath, perhaps you need to learn how to tune out, protect from all the low frequencies generally that people are experiencing. It's like, I want to feel all people's bullshit. I don't want to feel all people's anxiety. I want to feel all their negative drama that's going on. Great. Let's work on that. Let's master your defense system against those frequencies. I just want the happy people because happy people attract happy people. Thoughts? I can see your brain whirling there.
Yeah, well, I think that's a key, and we there's an old saying called "your vibe attracts your tribe,"
Mm-hmm.
and this has been sort of an online thing for going back since early days of social media, and I think it absolutely still holds true. Is that you, unless you're wanting to be an influencer with millions of followers, which is a road to nowhere. At the end of the day, is we don't need to attract everyone to our business, our personal brand. We just need to attract the right people, and that is, there could be some indefinable things about your vibe, but I always unpack it and say, well, what's your philosophy, and can you get your philosophy out there about your way of thinking and doing things relative to your industry, your profession, your expertise. What are your values and your principles, for example?
Yep.
And being able to weave them in your content and your stories and your videos or whatever you speak about, and that's going to repel people and attract the right people. And the stronger you are on that, and that's where you don't just snap your fingers and this happens, you learn it over time. But the stronger you are in your story, your message, your beliefs, your principles, your values, and if that comes out in your speaking, your presentations, your interviews, your podcasts, your YouTube, whatever you're doing, your writing, then you're going to start attracting the right people. And yes, you will, the word's a bit strong, repel. You're filtering out the people who probably don't really believe in you, and they're the ones who aren't going to be doing business with you or referring people to you anyway. So that's why I think it's really important to understand that side of things, which is aligned with what you're saying, is understanding yourself, and but then being able to express that in how you put yourself out in the world.
What would you say? I feel I've done a lot of talking. I'd like to hear from you. What would you say underpins a personal brand?
Well, exactly those things, I think. I think your personal brand really is who you are and how you want to show up in the world authentically. I know that word authentically gets bandied around a bit, but I think it does come back to your values and your principles and the way you go about things, and that should be expressed. You get people saying, "I'm going to craft a personal brand or create this personal brand," and they're creating a persona of what they think that how they think they should look in the marketplace, and that's a road to nowhere, because it's not you, and you're going to trip yourself up at some point. But personal branding is really inherently knowing yourself, the value you bring to the table, your values, your principles, and putting that out there. And it sounds weird. Your personal brand is just being yourself out there, but it's probably how personal branding then is how you express that. So it might be in the photography that's done, your photography for all your social media and your website. It could be the way you dress. Some people are are very bright, and that parlays into their their personality. And we see that visually. The colours that they'll use on their website or their brochures or whatever it is will dictate to a degree a visual representation of who they are. But if you don't know who you are, then that visual representation is really hard to get. You got to know yourself and really just put that version of yourself out there. And the problem is, people for many years with this whole influencer thing, people are adding veneer to that. And we're not. There is a reason why TikTok and raw videos are taking off like crazy, because we want to see that. There's we want to see rawness and authenticity and real people. There's a reason why live streaming is really popular, because we want to see people trip up and be their real selves and not overly edited and not overly scripted and that side of things. So, we've seen this for a long time, and that's what social media originally was. Being out there and talking to people and being a bit raw about it. And then it went the other way. And now it's coming back, I think, a bit more to that authenticity as a result of the whole influencer and the fakeness of everything.
In response, I entered a competition a couple of years ago. It was a speaking competition, and I didn't win. And the feedback was I was too polished. And I was kind of like, what? How can you be too polished? Like, it's a competition. It's supposed to be slick, isn't it? And it took me a little while. Like, human, the ego wanted to kind of bullshit that didn't like it. But when I looked back and had the courage to analyze from that lens of what is too polished, what I was able to see for myself was that persona of perfection is it creates a disconnect.
Yep.
The reader, viewer, audience can't connect with something that is so polished that they're like, ooh, I can't be. It's like the newsreader. It's so slick that it's almost robotic. And I think that's how the AI may become easier to spot, because it's going to be so slick.
Yep.
And I've got no problem with AI, just to put that. But I think those who are working on themselves to be human with all our flaws and all our quirks and all the things actually we don't like that people don't even see or notice or aware of, that is actually going to be more that thing, that resonance. Why are we attracted to some channels versus others? Why do we watch some videos versus others? And the truth is, you feel a resonance, a connection. You feel something subtle or significant that appeals to you. That's my kind of person. Or there's just a vibe about them, their essence, whatever the language is. I just feel drawn to them. Charismatic. What is charisma? Authenticity personified.
Yep.
Now, talking about authentic, I have met a couple of individuals over the years who talk about being authentic, but here's how what that doesn't mean. When they are on screen, they're vivacious and they're big and they're being authentically themselves. Yet when you act with them behind scenes and they're speaking to their staff, they're speaking to them disgracefully or derogatory. I'm like, Jesus, who are they speaking to? That's their team members? That's the incongruence that I think social media has allowed us all to tune into. We can spot, apparently the Australians are the best radars in the world for BS.
Yep.
Now, why is that? I'm not sure. We could talk about ancestrally. I don't know. But there are plenty of people who are authentically shitty people, but they're showing up shitty. At least you know what you're getting. And that's going to resonate with other people.
That's it. I mean, I remember the early days of blogging, and there were people who were, quite strong voices as a blogger. And you'd go to the conferences and meet them, and they were meek and mild, and there was just a disconnect there. And there are people who are provocative. I know a couple in my industry in the marketing world, and they're very provocative, and they're smart, and they're intelligent, and they're not afraid. They're not afraid. They put their views out there, and when you talk to them, they're the same. They're exactly the same. And you get the others that are, really, sweet and beautiful and all of that sort of stuff. And they attract a tribe of people who like that, who like the way they put stuff out and tell their stories and be so open and human. And, probably are really lousy speakers potentially on stage because they might be painfully shy, but they're going to be loved by their people. And I'm not saying by any means when I say raw and authentic, not be professional. And there's times when maybe polish really is required in a video or a really important keynote or whatever, and you have to be scripted. If you're going to give this talk and you can't mess it up, then there's nothing wrong with having a script.
Yes.
But I think the thing is that if people can learn not to overcook it. And I had a client, and his early videos were in the boardroom, and he wasn't looking at the camera, and beautifully lit and shot, and he was in the suit and tie, and he said no one will watch them. I said, well, they're boring. Your topic's boring, your persona's boring, you're positioning yourself as you think your clients want you to be. And then we just started doing YouTube videos with him talking straight to camera with no tie, in his home. Little bit of lighting. Always started improving with some mic and audio and stuff, but just you could see that gradual improvement. And now he's on TV, and he's killing it on TV. His videos were much better. They're much more interesting and engaging, and you got to see the real him, and the real him was really good. And I love seeing that. And that's what we want. That's in content. We want the real you out there. And we're seeing this on, people fighting this on LinkedIn particularly. I think LinkedIn's come a long way from that. It used to be so buttoned down. And I guess after COVID, people were dressed more casually. They didn't have to be in the office with a background. They could be at home. Working from home is not a big deal anymore. And so we have loosened up, and LinkedIn did become quite social over COVID because we reverted to who we were. It did swung the other way, where people were getting great clicks and whatever by trauma dumping and doing stuff that, hey, that's pretty good for Facebook. And even then I probably wouldn't go that far. But we're swinging back away from that. And I think the algorithm's protecting us from those people who are just doing that trauma dumping is the word, but that in quotes, the vulnerability piece. Are they doing it? Are they genuine and they've been told to do it, or are they doing it because they want the clicks? I'm cynical. I think, people do it for the clicks. But we're seeing less of that now. But
I just want to respond to that briefly. Sometimes it can be a cry for help, and that needs to be noted and paid attention to. And again, it's tuning into I won't watch certain movies because it just disturbs me. That disruption hangs around for days with certain storylines or visuals. So I just don't expose myself to it. But does that mean I can't have empathy for people who are suffering? No. It's when is the right time and how much. I just wanted to say that.
Yep. And I see point. I agree with that. There's, I guess it's interesting how the algorithm's taken away a lot of that side of things, but we're still seeing good stories, and I think that's what we want, is good stories of people peeling the layers off and to tell the story. They need to go back and say, well, this is why I did what I did, and this is the lessons learned. We're seeing a lot of that. People are actually, there are events now where people get up and it's designed where they stuffed up. Yeah. You're going up, your keynote or whatever, your talk is the biggest mistake I ever made. Yeah. And we're starting to see this at really entrepreneurial meetups and at a lower community level. And that's been this whole push around being able to get up there and say that and be vulnerable, but doing it in such a way that there's a lesson learned from it. It's not just about putting it out there for yourself, but what's the audience going, what's the takeout? And I did this, and this is how I grew from it, which is, a very powerful story in many cases. And we're seeing a lot more of that, which comes across most times as genuine. Again, people trying to do that to game the system, to game the algorithm. But generally what I see in that regard is that people are peeling off layers. This is me. This is my experience. This is what I've gone through. And I guess bringing it back
overnight success.
That's it. And it's the antithesis to this whole bro marketing of, I got 50,000 followers in 2 months and I made $1 million. It's a push against that. And I do know that those bro marketing tactics and everything that are out there are often a reason why people do stick themselves in a box and not come out because they don't want to be like that. So that's yet another reason.
Yeah.
But I think this peeling off of layers that we're seeing in a genuine way, it's allowing people to be more of themselves out there. And I think that's when it's, maybe that's one way of, people are starting to overcome. Well, this is me. This is who I am. Take it or leave it. And that's a strong position to come from when you put it out there like that.
And to give a bit more of this, how do you do that in a way that is safe or comfortable? We talk about self-care, and what's a simpler way of understanding what that thing is? What makes you feel good? That's self-care. I'm not talking about massages and all those beautiful things, but what makes me feel safe to do this? Is it, as I push go, I'm going to have my coach or I'm going to have my business bestie on the phone going, "Eee! I've hit send to Forbes. I'm crapping myself." And having that support mechanism on the phone as you go. That's funny. I'm holding my phone like the old-fashioned phones instead of my mobile phone. Anywho, the self-care around, if I put this newspaper article out to the Sunday Mail or whatever it's going to be, and it gets taken up, what will help me manage my emotions? There's a reason famous people, the celebrities, have a team, because they're the filter. They will read the newspapers, they will take whatever the mainstream success is, and they will filter it through for the celebrity, going, you know what, this was taken all out of context, you don't even need to see this. That's what we need to do. That's self-care. What do I need to do to be okay with whatever this visibility piece is today? Don't know when it's going to come out, but as soon as it comes out, I'm calling my mum. I'm calling Colin, whatever it needs to be.
Yep. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I will say this, and again, this is me peeling off layers, but, having, I'm an ex-journalist, so I used to write the stories and I know the space incredibly well. But then when I started in social, backtrack a bit, I ran a PR firm and was a consultant for decades. Then when I started putting my content out there and blogging and being on social media, I started getting the noticed and outside of my marketing industry and in broader business circles and being asked to speak and, all the things that I didn't want to do. But I also got the media on the phone to me. Can I quote this? Can we ask you a question about this being quoted? Right down to being on, news programs, on the camera, in the studio with the spotlight on you. And there's nothing more terrifying, particularly when, I guess, like me, you've been in the background. Then being up front can be a scary thing, but you've got to eat your own dog food, surely. But that doesn't get easy for anyone, even if you know the game and you've been in it, and still to stick yourself out the front is not that easy. And when I've been quoted, so I know that I've rung the journalist, right? And you think you've done a good job, but their quotes may have misquoted you. There's every chance you've been misquoted. They're only human. They're not doing it on purpose. And then you pick up the paper or look at the online thing when it comes out, and your heart does skip a beat. Absolutely will skip a beat before you look at it. And am I going to be misquoted? Am I going to be whatever? Now, I can always say, I don't want to be in this and just say no. And, sometimes I do say no to interviews if they're not right and the topic's not right and it doesn't work for me. But in the case, if it's a national newspaper and they want to talk to you and you're going to get this visibility and add a bit of value to the story, then you do it. But I've got to tell you, your heart's in the mouth when the paper comes out. Absolutely.
And that's where having that support net mechanism, whatever that is for you, go off the continent if you have to, leave the country, whatever it needs to self-care. But then when you have built your resilience enough to look at it or read it or address it, it's Okay, what's the real reality of being this misquote? They've taken all that. Like, what's the worst case? And sometimes doing this activity before you hit submit is I used to do this back in my trauma day. Well, what's the worst case? Let's plan for that.
Yep.
Okay, my husband might leave me. Okay, let's plan for that. Often that doesn't happen, but because you're prepared, your confidence is higher to deal with it.
Yep.
Secondly, if you have had some negative misquotes, whatever it is, not turn out the way you want, being able to recognize that, is it really the end of the world? Who really is going to see this? Are they the people that you deeply care about? Firstly, will they even understand or believe what's being said?
Yep.
Secondly, if it's strangers and it's been taken out of context, well, if they want to believe that, that's why I don't pay any attention to the gossips, anything to do with celebrities. There's always an angle. I don't believe anything until I hear it from the horse's mouth.
Yep.
Or people are having this little, Meads and what's his name, Harry. Everybody had an opinion. None of us know the truth. None of us.
Yep.
Just opinions, perspectives. Yep. So do you think they are really paying attention to every piece of negative comment? Because there's a bunch of strangers judging you. They don't know you. They don't know the situation, regardless of what's printed or published.
Yep.
That takes a lot of strength of character.
Yes.
And maybe some practice to get to that place of resilience, going, well, these are strangers. They don't know me. Therefore, I'm not going to give overly my worrying energy, which is stopping me today from doing the next thing that I need to be focusing on.
Yep.
Or preparing a better piece in response.
So there's two parts. The resilience is once you've gone out there and done it and being strong enough that, okay, this is fine, or it's not didn't come out as well as I wanted, or hallelujah, this is fantastic. I don't need to be resilient because this is the best piece ever, and everyone loves it, and they're all sharing it, and that's where we want to be. So resilience is one part once you are putting yourself out there, and in the one in advance is that there's a little bit more to unpack there, whether it's you've got to identify really what is holding you back, just trying to circle back to everything and cogently summarize in one sentence this conversation. But as we said at the outset, there are a number of there are a number of things that will hold you back, and you really need to dig a bit deeper and work out why in that.
Yeah, ultimately that self-awareness. In any leadership role, whether you're supervisor dealing with conflict or avoiding the conflict in the workplace, whether there's troubles at home, everything in life comes back to what am I avoiding and why?
Yep, that's it. Awesome. Mell B, not Spice Girl Mell B.
The other Mell B with two L's.
The other Mell B, yes. Who's the real Mell B? You should have a social media.
I'm not a female of color, so I deeply admire what I've seen, talking about credibility and what I've read and what I've seen. I love Mell B of color. She's awesome. I'm Mell with two L's.
That's it. Mell with two L's. What's the best way people can find you and not end up with Spice Girls?
Well, it depends on what you're looking for. If you want my website, literally, yes, mellb.com. There's a bunch of free resources in there for empaths. Yep. Or all the social channels. If you search Mell B, Mell with two L's, Battlement.
Two L's.
You should find me bright orange. Then you should find me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. This has been a really wide-reaching and quite deep in parts, which is really good to be able to dig into this topic that I know affects a lot of people. And I thank you very much for your time and generosity in sharing your ideas, insights, and expertise.
Thank you for the opportunity.